Welcome to another week of church school at Grace United Methodist Church in Winfield. These weeks are occupied with my own sharing of what I learned from the faith community within the Indian community as I lived with them for a period of time. This week I begin with a story that centers on Karen, my wife. Because of her lifestyle and her own commitment to listening, Karen had an immediate, close connection with the Indian community. This connection led to an incredible event. After our 8 years with the Indian community and our departure was occurring because of my retirement, Karen was taken aside in a going away experience together, and she was dressed in a Ponca tribal dress, which was an act of becoming a member of the tribe in every setting or occasion of tribal affairs. Because of who she was. And one occasion for listening was with the elder of one of the tribes. He asked Karen to explain why persons who committed a crime under U.S. law and were sentenced to prison and served their time, they were not restored to the rights of citizenship. They were not allowed to vote and had other permanent restrictions on their citizenship. I don't know how Karen responded because I was not a part of the conversation, but however, I do know that Karen asked this very gentle man what was the practice of his own tribe. And he responded that in his tribe and in most Indian communities, one who commits a crime receives the appropriate penalty of imprisonment. The difference is, when released from prison, their citizenship in the tribe is fully restored. His opinion that this was more just and motivates a person in prison to know that if they make corrective changes in their attitudes that led them to the criminal behavior, that when they get out, they will be a full member of the tribe again, rather than a system that continued to punish one who had served their time. During this time of serving in Oklahoma, the United Methodists developed an effective prison ministry emphasizing restorative justice. The problem of this ministry was that even after serving time in prison, citizenship was not restored. Rights were not restored. And often dehumanizing practices were exercised against ex-convicts. This elder shared with Karen that he couldn't understand, quote, the white man's definition and system of justice when a criminal citizenship was never restored. Justice seemed to be handicapped. Now, about this same time as Karen had this conversation with this wonderful human being, an Indian serving time in prison for a nonviolent crime applied to begin his journey into pastoral ministry. He was approved to be appointed as a lay pastor to a local church by the Board of Ordained Ministry. The cabinet of OIMC met and considered the gifts and graces of this person and identified a congregation which we believed would cherish his gifts and be faithfully served by this person. This person was introduced to the staff parish committee of the congregation. They were fully informed of his life journey, and they welcomed him as their pastor. And the whole congregation welcomed him on his first Sunday in worship. Throughout that whole process, the cabinet, the Board of Ordained Ministry, the staff parish committee, and the congregation, the question whether his criminal record should prevent him from serving was never raised in the Indian community with whom I served. This defined for me restorative justice. The purpose of punishment is for a person to be fully restored, not handicapped for life. Now, regretfully, in a conference dominated by Anglos, a similar journey took place. This person, similar to the person I've just described in the Indian community, finally did receive an appointment after several congregations rejected him. The difference was that every step of the way, the Board of Ordained Ministry, the cabinet, the local church's staff parish committee, and congregations, questions and objections were raised, not about this person's gifts and graces, but about whether one's criminal record of a nonviolent crime prevented him from readiness for pastoral ministry. I learned the difference between an understanding of restorative justice and handicapped justice. Now, of course, there are exceptions, including crimes which professional assessment determines are a result of personality or mental or physical disorders. Such exceptions would change the stories that I've told. However, what I learned is that exceptions to the rule of restorative justice are more easily determined and implemented than the customary practice of no exceptions in handicapped justice. You see, I am convinced that from the perspective of faith, exceptions to restorative justice is more faithful than having no exceptions for handicapped justice. This has been a very helpful learning for me in my journey of faith. And let me share again what I am convinced of, and that is from the perspective of faith, exceptions to restorative justice is more faithful than no exceptions in a system of handicapped justice. Been helpful for me. I hope it's helpful for you to hear my story. And to begin your thinking, some questions that you might probe. What, in your opinion, is the basis and rationale of handicapped justice with no exceptions? What are examples of legitimate exceptions to restorative justice? And what are the negative consequences for society of a system of handicapped justice with no exceptions? Thank you for being a part of our time together.